Zuri sat in the courtroom with her hands folded tightly in her lap. The papers were placed in front of her, thick and heavy, like they carried the weight of her whole life. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just picked up the pen and signed where the lawyer pointed. The scratching sound of her signature felt louder than everything else in the room. Across from her, Cabello leaned back in his chair, relaxed, almost amused. A small smile played on his lips, the kind that said he already knew the outcome. The judge's voice was calm and firm as the decisions were read out. The house went to Cabello. The savings went to Cabello. The car, the furniture, the investments, everything went to Cabello. Then came the last line, the one that hit Zuri in the chest. Her late mother's jewelry, the only thing she had begged to keep, was also awarded to him. Her fingers trembled, but she said nothing. The gavel came down, and just like that it was over. People in the courtroom whispered as Zuri stood up. Some shook their heads. Others looked at her with pity. "She's finished," someone murmured. Cabello stood too, straightening his jacket, shaking hands with his lawyer like a man celebrating a deal. He didn't look back at Zuri even once. As he walked out of the courtroom, his steps were light and confident. In his mind, he had taken everything that mattered. He believed he had broken her completely. He believed this was the end of Zuri's story. Outside the courthouse, the air felt heavy and loud at the same time. Cars passed, people talked, life kept moving like nothing important had just happened. Zuri stepped out slowly, holding the strap of her small bag. It was the only thing she had left. Before she could take more than a few steps, Cabello's voice stopped her. "So this is it," he said with a laugh. "Look at you. Nothing left." He stood there smiling, proud, as if the pain on her face was proof of his victory. His family gathered around him like an audience waiting for a show. His sister laughed openly. "You thought you were special," she said. "Now you're back to zero. Actually, even below zero." His mother shook her head and added, "A woman without a home, without money, without a husband. What will you even do now?" Their words hit Zuri one by one, like small stones thrown at her heart. People walking by slowed down, pretending not to stare while listening to every word. Zuri felt her face burn. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them how she had supported Cabello when he had nothing, how she had sacrificed everything for that marriage. But her throat felt tight, and no sound came out. Cabello stepped closer and lowered his voice, just enough to feel cruel. "I told you," he said. "Without me you are nothing. You should have listened." Then he smiled again, louder this time so everyone could see. "Good luck starting over. You're going to need it." Zuri looked at all of them, at their mocking faces, at their satisfied smiles. For a moment her legs felt weak. Her chest hurt so badly it felt hard to breathe. But she refused to give them what they wanted. She refused to cry in front of them. She nodded once. Just once. "Okay," she said quietly. That was it. No arguing. No begging. No explanations. She adjusted the bag on her shoulder and turned away. Each step felt heavy, like she was walking through water, but she kept moving. Behind her, laughter followed, sharp and careless. As she walked down the steps, tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not there. Not in front of them. Inside everything was breaking, but on the outside she stayed calm. With every step away from the courthouse, she told herself one thing over and over: survive today. She disappeared into the crowd with nothing but a small bag and a wounded heart. To them she looked defeated. To them she looked finished. But deep inside, buried under the pain and humiliation, something else was forming. Quiet strength, promised to herself. They had taken everything they could see, but they had no idea what she was still carrying inside. That night, Zuri lay on a narrow bed in a small, unfamiliar room, staring at the ceiling. The silence was loud. Every sound felt bigger than it should have. When she closed her eyes, memories rushed in, one after another, like they had been waiting for permission to hurt her. She remembered the early days with Cabello, when he had nothing but big dreams and empty pockets. She saw herself handing him her savings, telling him, "We'll figure it out together." She remembered working late shifts, coming home tired, yet still smiling while he talked about his plans. When his first business idea failed, she was the one who told him not to give up. When no one believed in him, she did. Her mind replayed the long nights at the kitchen table. Zuri helping him write proposals, checking numbers, fixing mistakes. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't ask for thanks. She believed they were building a future together. When his business finally started to grow, people praised Cabello for being smart and hardworking. No one saw Zuri in the background, quietly holding everything together. She thought about her own dreams, the career she once wanted. She had put it on pause for now, telling herself there would be time later. Later never came. Every time she tried to focus on herself, there was always something more urgent for Cabello, something that needed her attention. Slowly, her world became smaller, centered around his success. The divorce didn't just take the house or the money, took her story with it. Years of sacrifice were erased in one courtroom. To everyone else, it looked like Cabello built everything alone, and Zuri was just a woman who walked away with nothing. The weight of it finally became too much. Zuri turned her face into the pillow and cried. Not quiet tears, but deep, painful sobs that shook her body. She cried for the love she gave freely. She cried for the respect she never received. She cried for the woman she used to be before she started shrinking herself for someone else's dream. When the tears slowed, Zuri wiped her face and sat up. Her chest still hurt, but her mind felt strangely clear. She whispered to herself, "I did not lose because I am weak. I lost because I gave too much to the wrong person." In that small room, with nothing but memories and pain, Zuri made a quiet decision. She would stop building other people's lives. From now on, every effort, every late night, every sacrifice would be for herself. They could erase her past, but they would not erase her future. Zuri's new life began in a tiny room in Durban, barely big enough for a bed, a small table, and her suitcase. The walls were thin, the window was cracked, and at night she could hear the noise of the street below. It was nothing like the home she once had, but it was all hers. When she locked the door for the first time, she leaned against it and took a deep breath. This was the bottom, and somehow that made things clear. She found a low-paying job within a week. The hours were long, the work was tiring, and the pay barely covered rent and food. Some days she came home with aching feet and empty hands. At work people talked. They always did. Someone mentioned her divorce like it was a warning sign. Others looked at her with pity, whispering that she was used up, like her life had already ended because a marriage had failed. Zuri heard it all, even when they thought she didn't. Each word stung, but she swallowed the pain and kept going. She didn't tell anyone who she used to be or what she once had. To them, she was just Zuri, the quiet woman who showed up early, worked hard, and never complained. Her past stayed locked inside her, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. After work, while others rested, Zuri opened her old laptop. She watched free lessons online, teaching herself new skills late into the night. Some nights she barely understood anything, and frustration brought tears to her eyes. But she reminded herself that no one was coming to save her. If she wanted more, she would have to build it alone. There were days she almost gave up. Days when she stared at the ceiling of that small room and wondered if Cabello was right, if she really was nothing without him. But then she would remember how she survived worse. How she walked out of court with nothing but still kept her dignity. That memory pushed her forward. Slowly, something inside her began to change. The shame she carried started to feel lighter. In its place came discipline, confidence, quiet pride. She learned to celebrate small wins like understanding a new concept or finishing a tough shift without breaking down. These moments didn't look impressive to anyone else, but to Zuri, they meant everything. Months passed, and Zuri stood a little taller. Her eyes looked different, stronger. She still had little, but she no longer felt empty. Starting from nothing had stripped her of fear. She was no longer trying to prove herself to anyone. She was rebuilding piece by piece, and this time every brick belonged to her. Late one night, after another long shift, Zuri sat on her bed with her laptop open and her legs hanging over the side. The room was quiet, and the city noise felt far away. As she scrolled through old files, something familiar caught her eye. A folder she hadn't opened in years. She clicked on it and suddenly the past came rushing back. It was her idea. A small tech concept she had once created during her marriage. She remembered the excitement she felt back then, explaining it to Cabello with hope in her voice. She remembered how he barely looked up from his phone, how he laughed and said, "This is too small. It will never go anywhere." After that, she had closed the folder and convinced herself he was right. Now, staring at the screen, Zuri felt something different. Not doubt but curiosity. She began reading her old notes, her sketches, her plans. They weren't perfect, but they were smart, useful. Her heart started beating faster. What if this idea was never small? What if it was just ignored? Night after night, Zuri worked on it quietly. After work, after dinner, after the world went to sleep. She learned, fixed mistakes, improved the design. Some nights she was so tired her eyes burned, but she kept going. This time she wasn't asking anyone for permission. Weeks turned into months. Slowly the idea started to look real. Not a dream, not a fantasy, but something that could actually work. Zuri kept it to herself. No one at work knew. No one in her past knew. This was hers and she was protecting it. One evening, she gathered the courage to attend a small local tech meetup. She almost turned back at the door, feeling out of place, but she forced herself to stay. When it was her turn to speak, her hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. She explained her idea simply, honestly, without pretending to be someone she wasn't. After the event, a man approached her. He wasn't flashy or loud. He listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. He told her he was a local investor and that he liked the way she thought. Not just the idea but her clarity, her discipline, her vision. For the first time in a long time, Zuri felt truly seen. Not as someone's wife, not as a divorced woman, not as a failure, but as a mind with value. When she walked home that night, the streets felt different, lighter. She smiled to herself, holding her bag tightly. Cabello had taken many things from her, but he had missed the most important one: her ideas, her intelligence, her ability to create something from nothing. And this time someone else had noticed. While Zuri was building her future quietly, Cabello was living the life everyone thought he deserved. He had the house, the car, the money, and the praise. On the outside, nothing had changed. People still called him successful. They still invited him to meetings and events. He still walked in with confidence. But slowly, cracks began to appear. Without Zuri, things felt different. Decisions that once came easily now felt confusing. Small problems turned into big ones. Cabello noticed numbers weren't adding up the way they used to. Deadlines were missed. Clients complained. He blamed stress at first, then bad luck. It never crossed his mind that Zuri had been the quiet order behind his success. Trying to prove he was still in control, Cabello started making risky moves. He signed deals without reading carefully. He trusted people who praised him too much and questioned him too little. New partners promised fast growth and easy money, and Cabello believed them. He wanted quick wins. He wanted to show the world he didn't need anyone. Money started leaving faster than it came in. Expenses grew. Profits shrank. He told himself it was temporary. He told his family not to worry. But late at night, alone in his big house, the silence made him uneasy. He missed the calm voice that used to sit across from him, asking the right questions, catching the small mistakes. His confidence began to slip. At meetings he talked more and listened less. When someone challenged him, he felt attacked. He became defensive, short-tempered. Employees noticed. Some started leaving. Others stayed quiet, watching the ship slowly drift off course. One evening, Cabello stood in his office staring at old photos on his desk. Pictures from the early days. Pictures with Zuri, smiling, tired, hopeful. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. He pushed it away quickly. He told himself she was holding him back. He told himself he was better off now. But deep down, fear had taken root. Calls from creditors became more frequent. A deal he had bragged about fell apart at the last minute. Another investor pulled out without warning. The respect he once commanded started to feel thin, almost forced. The man who once walked proudly out of court now avoided mirrors. His shoulders drooped. His smile felt fake. The world hadn't turned against him overnight, but it was slowly withdrawing its support. Cabello didn't realize it yet, but the fall had already begun. And this time, there was no one beside him to catch the mistakes before they became disasters. The event in Cape Town was supposed to be a fresh start for Cabello. A new city, new faces, new opportunities. He walked into the large hall adjusting his jacket, reminding himself that he still belonged in rooms like this. The lights were bright, the air was filled with quiet conversations and the soft clinking of glasses. He tried to look confident, even though his mind was heavy with unfinished deals and unanswered calls. He took a seat near the front as the program began. Names were announced, speakers introduced. Cabello listened with half-interest, clapping when everyone else clapped. Then the host smiled and said a name that made his chest tighten. "Please welcome our next speaker, the founder and CEO of..." Cabello stopped breathing. Zuri walked onto the stage. For a second, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but there she was, standing tall, confident, dressed simply yet powerful. The room filled with applause, and Cabello felt frozen in his seat. This was not the woman who had walked out of court with one small bag. This was not the woman he had mocked and left behind. Zuri began to speak, and her voice was steady, clear and sure. She talked about innovation, about solving real problems, about building something from nothing. People leaned forward to listen. They nodded. They smiled. Some even took notes. Cabello watched as respect followed her every word. Then the screen behind her lit up with her company's logo. Cabello's heart sank. He recognized it immediately. This was the same company that had recently started winning contracts he had been chasing. The same company investors kept mentioning in meetings, calling it the future. It was hers. Memories rushed back. The small ideas she once shared. The ones he laughed at. The nights she stayed up working while he slept. His mouth went dry. Everything suddenly made sense. When Zuri finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. People stood. Cabello clapped slowly, his hands heavy, his mind racing. He felt small, surrounded by success that no longer included him. As Zuri stepped off the stage, their eyes met for just a moment. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. She simply nodded politely, like she was greeting a stranger. That hurt more than anger ever could. In that moment, Cabello understood the truth. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost the mind, the discipline, and the strength behind everything he once called his success. And now, the woman he thought he destroyed was standing in his way, shining brighter than ever. After the event ended and the crowd slowly faded, Cabello waited near the side exit, his mind spinning. When he finally saw Zuri walking toward the parking area, he stepped in front of her. His heart was pounding, a mix of anger, shock, and something that felt like regret. "So this is who you are now," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You had all this in you, and you never told me. You hid this from me while we were married." Zuri stopped and looked at him calmly. There was no fear in her eyes. No anger either. Just clarity. "I didn't hide anything," she said softly. "You just never listened." Cabello shook his head. "That's not true. If I knew you could do this, things would have been different." His voice rose. "You let me walk away thinking you were nothing." Zuri took a slow breath. "You walked away because you wanted everything," she replied. "And you took it. The house, the money, car, even my mother's jewelry." Her voice stayed steady. "But you couldn't take my brain. You couldn't take my discipline. And you couldn't take my dignity." Those words hit him harder than shouting ever could. Cabello looked away, struggling to speak. "You could have helped me," he said quietly. "We could have built this together." Zuri shook her head. "I already did," she said. "I built your life once. I won't do it again." For the first time, Cabello really saw her. Not as the woman he controlled, not as the wife who sacrificed everything, but as someone complete on her own. He realized how many times she had tried to share her ideas, how often he had dismissed her. He remembered laughing. He remembered not caring. The truth settled in slowly, painfully. He hadn't lost Zuri because of the divorce. He lost her long before that. the moment he stopped valuing her mind and only measured worth in money and control. Zuri picked up her bag and took a step back. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. Not cold, not kind, just honest. As she walked away, Cabello stood there alone, surrounded by the echo of her words. In that quiet space, he finally understood what he had truly lost. And by then it was far too late. By the time Cabello's business finally collapsed, there was nothing left to pretend. Offices closed. Calls went unanswered. Partners disappeared. The name that once opened doors now made people uncomfortable. Bills stacked up, and silence followed him everywhere. The man who once walked with pride now moved like someone carrying invisible weight. One afternoon he stood outside Zuri's office building, staring up at the glass doors. People walked in and out with purpose, with confidence. He hesitated, then stepped inside. When the receptionist asked his name, he lowered his voice. Sitting in the waiting area felt like punishment. Every second reminded him of how far he had fallen. When Zuri finally walked into the room, Cabello stood up quickly. She looked the same as she did on stage. Calm, focused, unshaken. He felt small in front of her success. "I need your help," he said, his voice breaking. "I've lost everything." He swallowed hard. "I made mistakes. I know that now. Please help me. We can fix this. Maybe even us." Zuri sat across from him and listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger. She simply let him speak. He talked about pressure, bad partners, bad timing. He talked about love. He talked about regret. He asked for forgiveness like it was another deal to be signed. When he finished, the room was quiet. Zuri folded her hands gently. "I hear you," she said. "But I'm not the woman you left behind." Cabello looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. "So you'll help me?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "I won't save a man who once destroyed me." Her voice was soft but firm. "I already paid that price." He reached out, but she didn't take his hand. "This isn't anger," she continued. "And it's not revenge. I just finished rebuilding myself. I won't go back." Cabello's shoulders dropped. For the first time there was nothing left to ask for. Zuri stood up and walked him to the door. "Take care of yourself," she said. And she meant it. As the door closed behind him, Zuri returned to her desk. Her heart was calm. Not heavy. Not bitter. It was free. Zuri stepped out of her office building one bright morning, the city buzzing around her. The streets of Cape Town felt different now, full of possibility, full of life. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to shout. She had built something from nothing, and every step she took was a reminder that she belonged here, on her own terms. Her company was growing fast. Clients trusted her, investors respected her, and her team followed her lead because they believed in her vision. People recognized her now, not as Cabello's ex-wife, not as the woman who lost everything, but as Zuri, a force of her own making. Each success, each small victory, felt like a quiet triumph over the years she had sacrificed for someone else. Sometimes she caught glimpses of Cabello in the news or heard his name mentioned in business circles. Once she saw him at a networking event, looking older, stressed, trying to regain the confidence he had lost. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel pride in revenge. She simply felt free. His world had shrunk while hers had grown. He had everything he wanted once, and still lost. Walking through the city, Zuri smiled to herself. She remembered the day he took the house, the money, the car, even her mother's jewelry. She remembered the whispers, the humiliation, the nights she cried alone. But those memories no longer weighed her down. They were fuel, not chains. She paused at a street corner and looked at the sunlight bouncing off the glass buildings. "He took everything I had," she thought, a quiet smile on her lips, "and unknowingly gave me the freedom to become everything he never could." Zuri walked on, head held high, her steps steady. Every challenge, every late night, every sacrifice had led her here. She was independent. She was strong. She was fulfilled. And the best part, she had done it all for herself. The world was hers now, and she would never let anyone take that away again.